Welcome to our Cleared for Takeoff, our Fearless Flight live weekly Facebook show. Once again, I'm Capt Ron, and with me is Dieter Staudinger, and we're here to help you sort through a rather full week of events. And I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you really probably aren't a fearful flyer. You're just faking it. So we've got some special things that we're going to talk about the event that happened, the crash in Washington D.C. But more importantly, we're going to talk about what to do to keep your fear at bay. So let me get right into it. I'm going to start the share, and hopefully you are seeing that. Okay, so just for the record, welcome once again to Fearless Flight Live. This is a show where you come if you have a fear of flying, if you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or if you just like to keep up on the airline industry. We do this every Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We appreciate all of you who lend your support and show up every week. The first thing we always mention is our Fearless Flight Private Birds of a Feather group on Facebook, where you can go. Over 1,700 people now, working our way to 2,000. I just checked today. Dieter said we had 20 in the last week that joined. I'm not surprised.
I think it was all the activity
that
kind of prompted more people to maybe look for help and support.
Yeah. So if you're a new member, introduce yourself, leave a post in there, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay. If you're already a member, welcome all the new people in there, and leave a little message and some tips in there. Tonight, Capt Ron in the news. Needless to say, I got a few inquiries from the media this week. And I had two TV and one on Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal one was supposed to go live, the internet version, tonight at, I believe, 9 o'clock Pacific. So in theory, it's already on the WSJ.com. I would imagine if you Google fear of flying, you'll put in there. It wasn't just a feature of me, but I was fortunate enough to have a big input on that. So take a look, go over there. If you Google Alerts, I was in there for an interview I did with a Charlotte, North Carolina TV station. And then I did 2 interviews with the local Fox News affiliate here in Phoenix. And of course, I had the class at the Phoenix airport on Saturday night. We've got the Clear for Takeoff 101 Live. We're going to resume class. Our goal is still somewhat tentative. We're targeting March 8th. Marking your calendars. I just confirmed with the fellow who owns the studio yesterday, and he said he is basically, I don't know if out of the woods is an appropriate term, but he is basically not having to hose down his property, either his home residence or his studio. So I'm planning to go over there, reconnect with him, and we'll be starting to put out information on that if you're interested in attending with us over there on March 8th. I'm going to do a little piece tonight on our U.S. skies safe, what you need to know with all the stuff in the news. I will highlight the live monthly group coaching webinar for February coming up on, I'm going to say the 20th. That's all I'm going to do because I need to look at the slide. And of course, we'll always take your questions. So don't know how many of you are out there playing, but we want to play along with you. And I thought we'd reverse the tables tonight. We're going to ask you for information first. So I put together a little quiz about fear of flying, and I think it's kind of a fun thing. Some of it should be intuitive, and maybe we'll trip you up here in a little bit. Imagine you're stepping onto an airplane. Forget that. Imagine you're just thinking about stepping onto an airplane. Your heart's racing, your mind's swirling with what ifs. That's the nature of the game of anxiety. And you hear about it, the accident in the Potomac. And this may have actually described many of you out there. Whatever you hear about aviation accidents in the news, and it's been all over this week, of course, and suddenly whatever doubts you had about flying overwhelm you. What if the truth was exactly the opposite? What if flying was actually the safest form of travel on the earth? And what if statistics and advancements in aviation technology prove beyond a doubt that your fears, though understandable, and we're never saying that your fears aren't real. Fears are real, that they trigger your biological response, and they give you all the realities of anxiety that goes with being in a real threat. But what if they're based more on perception than reality? And so tonight we're going to separate that fear from fact and try to replace some of your anxiety with knowledge. We're going to talk about how safe the skies really are today, and help you understand a little bit why tragic accidents like the one on the Potomac are extraordinarily rare. We'll go into a few of the details on that that have come to light, and we'll give you a perspective on some of the real risks out there, what you really need to look for, and it's not in aviation. So follow along with us. We're going to put them up here, and we're not going to answer them. We got a handout that Dieter will release here.
You can check yourself by putting your answers in the chat, because we'll post the answers in chat after the quiz a little later in the show.
Yeah, and maybe Dieter can get a feel for how many answers, or what's the dominant answer there. So, what are the odds of dying in an airplane crash? This is one that comes to mind a lot. 1 in 10,000, 1 in 500,000, 1 in 24.8 million, or 1 in 100 million. So, if you would pick A, B, C, or D, and we'll play we need some traveling music is what we need in here, like on Jeopardy. That's what we need, a little bit of that. All right, we'll do the next one. How often could you fly before experiencing a fatal accident? Now it has to do with the statistical probability. So whatever the odds were on the previous side, how long would you have to fly once a day, every day? How many years to achieve that risk? Once a day, every day for 10 years, as in answer A. In answer B, every day for 1,000 years. C, every day for 68,000 years. And D, every day for 200,000 years. And these statistics came from our good friend, Arnold Barnett. Many of you, if you've been with us at any length of time, it goes back to the days when we first got him to attend one of our live classes over in Burbank. And then he went to fly with us that day, I believe. But Arnold's a very interesting character. He's a scholar at MIT Sloan Institute. His specialty is statistics, and he has made that his life's work. His first motivation was because he had his own fear of flying. And so I saw an article today about him, and I've invited him to come on. It was a little late today to get him, but I'm hoping to get him on and let him talk live. He has a really unique way of looking at, a realistic way of looking at this.
So we got B's and D's here, Ron.
Everybody's saying D for this one?
B's and D's.
Oh, B and D for the first two. Okay. So number 3, what's more likely than dying in a plane crash? Being struck by lightning, being attacked by a dog, dying in a car accident, all the above. Okay. I should have put winning the lottery in there as well.
And I'll put a bonus one in becoming the next president of the United States.
There you go. Here you go.
That's a bonus one.
So make your choice there, and we'll move into the next one. What's the primary reason that aviation safety has improved dramatically over the last 50 years? Why is it that aviation is as safe as it is? One, or A, luck. I've had my share of luck. I would not deny that that's not an answer, or not a possibility. B, stricter regulations, better technology, and improved pilot training. Or C, fewer people flying. Or D, planes are flying lower to avoid crashes. Okay. All right, number 5. What is the safest mode of transportation? Well, I kind of gave that away, but we'll play with it anyway. A, trains, B, buses, C, airplanes, D, cars, and E, walking. I threw the walking in there just to give you something to chew on.
That's an interesting one for sure.
Okay. And true or false? More than 850 million people fly each year in the US alone. 850 million people. I didn't do the math, but you divide that out per day. It's a lot of people. Lots of people in the skies. I was looking earlier, the load factors. When I first went to work in the airline industry for staffing and planning purposes considered a full complement if we average 70% load factors. In other words, if we had 100 seats on an airplane, we considered if we were average 70 seats full on every flight, that was the system limits. Now I just saw the numbers are up around 85%. So that shows you that we're flying a lot more these days. Okay. Question number 7, what happens to risk of a plane crash every decade? A, it stays the same. B, it increases slightly. C, it drops by half. And D, it doubles. Stays the same, increases slightly, drops by half, or doubles. 8, what is the most common cause of aviation accidents today? A, bird strikes. B, pilot error. C, turbulence. And D, mechanical failure. Bird strikes, pilot error, turbulence, or mechanical failure. Number 9, true or false? You are more likely to be injured driving to the airport than on the flight itself. True or false? More likely to be injured driving to the airport than on the flight itself. And number 10, which of these is a proven way to manage your flight anxiety? A, understanding the facts about aviation safety. B, practicing deep breathing techniques. C, using guided visualizations and positive self-talk. And D, all of the above. I don't know, when I was in school, it was either go for the longest answer or all of the above.
Yeah. I will say this, all of the above is only true if you actually practice any of them or know that. So
yeah. Okay, so let's look at the content that supports that quiz here, and you can hang with us and feel free to ask any questions or take a look at your answers there. Like I said, Dieter will release those at the end of the.
I'll put them in here in a little bit.
Okay. All right. So again, just going back to my opening statement, imagine you're just thinking about flying. That's what gets us started for most people, and your mind just starts pumping these what ifs, and then you hear about an accident in the media, and all of the what ifs just keep spewing out of your brain. But not only what if the truth is the exact opposite, it is the exact opposite. Flying is the safest way to travel, and we'll talk about some of the reasons behind that. Are the U.S. skies safe? I did this thing. Don't join TikTok if you haven't. I did. I said don't do it, and I'll sit there sometimes for an hour before I realize that you just wasted another hour, Ron. But one of the things I did on what morning was it? I think it was maybe Sunday morning or maybe Saturday morning. Don't remember, but it was after the accident happened, and I went on there and I watched like 20 TikTok videos on there. It took an hour to do it, and there was one that had some semblance of factual information. All of the others were everything from religious reasons why it's happening to ones that said, look at what's going on, all these accidents. Have you ever, when I was growing up, I don't know if any of you have had this, but I was taught that bad things happen in threes, and so what happens? So when something happens, now you're queued up, you have confirmation bias. Now you look for the next two things that happen, and you forget about that. There was a number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You just notice the first three. So these are the things, and along with superstitions, that cause us to to believe non-factual events like that. And on TikTok, it was just incredible how bizarre some of those. And there are people that sometimes, no judgment about them, but they could barely carry a conversation. And they were talking about these preposterous reasons why that accident happened in DCA. And it had nothing to do with what they were talking about. Flying is risky. We've never disputed that, but not anywhere near what your mind makes the risks out to be. And we'll talk about those risks. So let's just talk briefly about what we know about this DC plane crash. And you know, a catastrophe is when we have a terrible accident. A tragedy is when it makes no sense why it happened, other than the fact that it was a perfect storm of events in a chain that if any one of them had not taken place, the accident would not have happened. And so this is just a little bit of a schematic that I found. So you've got the white path here, and the vertical lines show the altitude, relatively speaking, to the yellow one. The Black Hawk helicopter, I think it was Pat 25 was their call sign. They were coming from up north. This is looking southeast. They were coming from up north down the river, and this is a route that they plan and train. This particular organization is tasked to fly VIPs out of DC if there's some sort of a crisis. And so that's what they were doing. And it was around 8:30 at night on last Thursday night. We're coming along here. Many of you probably know this as well as I do right now. And then up comes an American Airlines flight. Now, if you look at the runway here, you can't see right off that, but here's the terminal. And this is runway 33. The yellow one, it's highlighted. If you land going that way, it's runway 33. If you land or this runway here is runway 01. And normally, and as was the case this night, when they're running traffic and the winds are anywhere out of the north, they land the airplanes and take off the airplanes on runway 01, this airplane. So this American Airlines Flight 5342, it was a regional jet. It was originally assigned to land on runway 01. But because you can see out here, the airplanes coming out of the gates here come out here. There's a parallel taxiway. So all of the airplanes waiting to take off line up on this parallel taxiway. And it doesn't take very long for them to accumulate a whole line of airplanes waiting to take off. So what happens is the tower, and this is true for a lot of airports where there's intersecting runways. What they did is they would get the airplanes that were on final approach for runway 01, and they would ask them to break off and just take a little bit of a right turn and then turn back to the left and land on runway 33. So what that does is if this airplane continues to land on 01, the waiting traffic has to wait not only for it to touch down, but has to wait for it to reach taxi speed and clear the runway, which, you know, I'm not kidding. It may only take 15 to 20 seconds or so to do that versus landing over here. But if you have 20, 30 airplanes getting ready to take off in the next few minutes, that can add 15 minutes to everybody's holding time there. So by having this airplane break off and land over here, it's a totally safe maneuver. They do it regularly over there, and that's what they had done. Then when they do, now if the airplane's in position, they can line them up in position, waiting for takeoff on runway 01 while this airplane lands. And once he's clear of the intersection, they can release him. And then they can usually land another one even before another one comes in to land on runway 33. So that's the background. American was originally scheduled to land here. So one of the many things that was out of the ordinary that night, had they allowed American to continue and land on runway 01, they would have landed and been on the ground well before they were ever encountering the Black Hawk helicopter. Okay, so that was just one of many things. It was a training mission, and so you've got an increased focus in the cockpit for the training pilot, working with the pilot who's getting checked out. I haven't seen definitively whether they were using night goggles, but one of the things that they say may have been a factor is that they were using night goggles, which changes the view. It certainly enhances low light situations, which is what they use normally when they do those missions. But what was critical on this particular case, the tower controller, who had only one person in this position, not in the whole tower, but in this particular position, instead of two, which would have been a full complement. So this tower controller, he sees them, the potential conflict emerging. And so what he says Army Black Hawk, because these guys are operating under visual flight rules. They're maintaining their own separation from the terrain and from other traffic. So what he says to them, he says, Pat 25, do you have the landing traffic in sight? And he points out, tries to point out American 5342. And instead, what is believed to have happened, there was an airplane that had just departed off here, and there was another American 319 right behind him, and it's widely believed that they saw the wrong airplane, but they called them in sight. And when they did that, that relieves the controller in the tower of any responsibility to provide separation between these two airplanes. And he, once again, he got a tower alert on the TCAS in the tower, telling him that there was a potential conflict between these two airplanes. And he made one more transition, but by the time he made the transmission, the airplanes had impacted. And this airplane, the helicopter, was supposed to be below 200 feet. At the time of impact, they were 349 feet, so they were slightly high. So that's another issue that went in there. But again, a tragic set of circumstances. And one, as a pilot, you just really hate it, not because the obvious reasons that the loss of life and all that, but because of the seemingly senseless number of little things that one of which could have been different. Nothing would have happened. So we'll find out what the outcome of this. And one of the things that I've had a lot of people, including the media, call me and ask for my assessment on all this. One of the things that I tell Fearful Flyers is one of the reasons that this has become so noteworthy is because we had, and you've heard us brag about the fact that we've had 15 years without a major fatality in the U.S. alone. And so what does that do? It makes us and the media prime for a newsworthy event like this. And so again, our hearts go out to the families, and obviously not as much, but even the tower controller, I guarantee you, he will carry that with him the rest of his life, thinking about what if he could have done something different. Okay. Have a personal request. I got I participate in Quora. It's an online, what would you call it?
It's a community
educational thing, right?
Or I'm gonna say experts mostly, where you can ask questions and have experts in the various fields answer those questions. So it's a very cool platform. Like all of them, of course, gotta do your own due diligence, but yeah, it's a community crowdsourced place for answers. And
because I've been a contributor before, I got a request, and so I looked at it, because I don't do these all that often. But the question put to me was, what do you think is going on with all the aviation industry incidents that have been happening the past few days globally? And I've already responded to the superstitious nature of us and the conspiracy theories and all that. And this is what I wrote. And Dieter is going to put a link out there where you can go over to this Quora article that I wrote. And we would be really grateful if you upvoted it, or you can downvote it too if you don't like it. But you can upvote it, and it increases our people's awareness of fearless flight over there. But here's what I wrote. I wrote, as long as humans remain at the heart of aviation, designing, building, maintaining, and operating aircraft, there will always be a margin for error. For 15 years, the U.S. aviation industry defied the odds, maintaining an unbroken streak of fatality-free commercial flights. That streak ended last Thursday, and it's a stark reminder that while aviation safety has reached extraordinary heights, it can never be completely immune to the imperfections of the human condition. Airplane accidents are not the result of a single failure, but rather the culmination of an intricate chain of events, a perfect storm where each link, however minor on its own, aligns in a way that makes catastrophe possible. Break any one link in the chain and the disaster is averted. But when the sequence remains unbroken, the outcome becomes inevitable. Despite exhaustive safety protocols, rigorous training, and cutting-edge technology, the reality is that human judgment, environmental factors, and mechanical limitations coexist in a delicate balance. Aviation, like all human endeavors, operates within the bounds of probability. And though the industry continually strives to push the risk closer to zero, it will never fully escape the influence of human fallibility. The true challenge is not in seeking perfection, but in relentlessly learning from each misstep, and ensuring that every accident serves us as a lesson, one that fortifies the future of flight. Yet despite this break in the streak, commercial aviation remains the safest way to travel on Earth. The level of scrutiny, analysis, and continuous improvement in aviation surpasses that of any other mode of transportation. Every incident fuels progress, every lesson strengthens safeguards, and every advancement moves the industry closer to its ultimate goal, making it the safest way to travel, or making the safest way to travel even safer. So if you have time and you're of the interest, click on that link and go over there and upvote it for us. So, all right, moving on. The reality of air safety. Yeah, it's true. Over 850 million passengers fly each year in the US, and your chances of dying on a flight are 1 in 24.8 million. Now, you've heard me say, you may recall, I've said 1 in 33.2 million. This is from Arnold Barnett, and I want to get him on the show to resolve the difference between this. But when the number 1 in 33.2 million relates to the tier 1 of the 3 tiers of aviation airplanes in the world, and United States and Australia, China, Western Europe, all of those airlines in those countries are on tier 1. When you go to the tier 2 and tier 3, the odds climb a little bit. So I think what they did is they averaged all of them. But the odds of you flying on one of the airlines that you're likely to fly on is really 1 in 33.2. But the answer for our purposes tonight is 1 in 24.8. And somebody's already out there, their chatter is saying, you didn't say 0 in 24.8, Ron. You said 1 in 24.8. And that's because our brains are not equipped to deal with probabilities in the same way that we deal in possibilities. So we tend to look at, that's what makes us what if creatures. Okay. Even though we're statistically the safest mode of transportation, it's our fears that tell us otherwise. How safe is it compared to others? I could have put 20 items down here. I could have gone out and researched. I've done this in the past. Your odds of dying, falling off of a covered wagon. I watched the movie 1823, and that was, and I saw an interview with one of the actors on there, and he kind of chuckled. He said that because in the Western, they portray threats from Indians, outlaws, and wildlife, snakes, and things like that. And he said he was surprised to hear that none of those were in the number one way to die. The number one way you would die in a covered wagon or a wagon trip like that was falling off the wagon, which I thought was, interesting. So here, how safe is flying compared to other risks? 1 in 24 million, you can see how it stacks up there. Being struck by lightning, slightly higher. A dog attack, even a dog attack is greater than being on an airplane. And of course, a car crash. If we killed as many people in airplanes as we do in automobiles, they would probably shut down the airlines within a week or so. On average, 109 people die every day from auto accidents. So the riskiest thing you'll do will be driving to the airport or from the airport to catch your flight. Why does it keep improving? And the reason it's so safe today is because we continue to make advancements in technology, in training, and safety regulations. It is rife. The industry is rife with compliance. You simply have to comply. So that's why when people ask me, is an RJ or a smaller airplane as safe as a larger airplane? I say yes, because they have to abide by the same developmental standards and operational standards. And
I got a question here,
go ahead.
which kind of fits into that. And the question is, don't get me wrong, but does this accident really count because it's the military and civil aviation? Is that a risk factor that usually isn't, I guess, other than in Washington, in DC, but is that a risk factor that now the FAA will look into in mitigating somehow?
Yeah, well, let me say one thing. It's a great question, and does it count as a commercial airplane crash? It does. It certainly does, because it happened, to a commercial airplane landing with a group of people on board. It will. There's already buzz in the media about looking at why they needed to run that training route. Just going back to that, why did they need to run that down underneath the traffic pattern during a recovery, basically at the airport, a busy time? Why didn't? And I already seen one proposal is they're going to take it out here to the south and bring it around. But you can bet on that. Another one is going to be, everybody on the helicopter seems to be very competent and all that. But when you, like I said, when you're conducting training with another pilot, your attention is somewhat diverted. Some of the environmental factors. One, they're flying so low, and the airplanes that are landing, the commercial airplanes, the RJ was coming in higher. So you're looking up to start with, and you're in a major metropolitan area in Washington, D.C. at night, and you've got all these background lights that look much brighter than landing lights. And so that also contributed to probably their reduced capability of spotting the correct airplane. And then the thing that I touched on earlier with one of the things they're looking into is if they had the new night vision goggles, which ironically provide them with better visibility in low light circumstances. But when you have bright lights like the background skyline in Washington, D.C., it makes it more starburst like. And that may be another reason why they didn't see the RJ until the last minute. It is believed they recovered the black boxes, and they were able to tell that at the last moment, I believe the RJ pulled up. One of the airplanes pulled up, but it was too little, too late, and that. So how they will quantify this, what changes they will make, we'll just have to wait and see until we get to.
And I guess in some ways there will have to be better communication or better.
For sure.
Exchange of information between, I'm gonna say, military and civil aviation
and you may have heard in the news that the Army helicopter was on a frequency range called UHF, ultra high frequency. It's just part of the bandwidth of all of the electromagnetic radiation waves that we communicate over. And the airliners are in very high frequency. That's in a slightly lower point on the spectrum. Why would they have different frequencies or different wavelengths for their communications networks for the military versus the airliners? Because if you're flying along in an airliner, now you got all this military traffic out there that's on the same radio frequency. Now the controllers could hear both the helicopter and the airliner, but the airliner and the helicopter could not hear what the other was saying on that. So that we'll see what happens out of that as well. So flight anxiety, and as much as we devoted our time here looking at what happened in Washington, D.C., remember, my purpose in talking to you this evening was not to get consumed by your anxiety of this thing. Flight anxiety it's often fueled by fear rather than facts. And the media coverage which is, a given in this day and age. It can make accidents seem more frequent. The reality is that aviation safety continues to improve, and that. I'd say 9 out of 10 people, when I initially talk to them in one of my coaching calls, they will say to me, I know it's not logical. I know that airplanes don't crash on a regular basis, but I'm just uncomfortable with various things about aviation. And adding to your education and perspective can help you manage your anxiety. On the slide, high profile accidents create fear, but they are rare. And you have to concede that. It's been 15 years since we had an accident. If you remember me saying, and I hope it didn't sound like I was bragging about how safe it's been, but I also said, as long as there are human beings involved, there will be incidents and accidents. And Thursday night proved that that's still true. Aviation prioritizes safety above all else. We had a priority in our flight manuals, as do all the other airlines: safety first, passenger comfort, and schedule. So while delays are something that may ruin your trip, may ruin your plans, it's always a lower priority than your comfort and safety, which is always at the top. And understanding how low and how infrequent and how rare it is to have airplane crashes it will help reduce your anxiety. So, like I said, the data shows a steady decline in air travel risks as we go over the year. And one of the questions was what happens over each decade? It's cut in half. Every 10 years, the likelihood of having an accident drops by 50%. And that's incredible. You won't find that in any other mode of travel there. And the last thing I'll leave you with is the recent incidents do not reflect a broader decline in safety, despite what you're going to see on TikTok or YouTube or something like that. So, okay.
So there is another question, but then there's also a comment that I really love from Tracy. The show doesn't skirt around stuff, but seeks to educate. And we bring experts in from everywhere. We can't pretend this stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it really is our intention not only to educate, but also to help you deal with what's coming up for you as we're educating. So it's not just going for that dopamine hit. It's really helping you calm yourself as well. And so there's a question from Stacy that may still fit with that, and she's asking, is it safer than to fly during the day, so during daylight, or not? Like, how would you answer that? And maybe we'd just have to answer that in with two different approaches.
Yeah, again, great question. Well, think about driving. Which is more challenging, driving in the daytime or driving at night? It depends. If you're driving in an ice storm in the daytime versus clear and no weather at night, the nighttime is going to be safer. So it depends on what else is going on. But generally speaking, you can't see as well at night. But what's hard to understand is when you're driving your car at night, there are no other restrictions imposed upon you. If you want to travel, 5 feet behind the car ahead of you at 70 miles an hour, you can do that. When you're in an airplane, you have to have spacing, and it's always there. If you're under instrument flying rules, which is what the RJ was flying under, so they were legal and had a right to be where they were all the way to touchdown. And the only thing that changed the obligation of the air traffic controllers to provide guaranteed separation was until that helicopter pilot said, we have the traffic in sight. When he said that relieved him. And think about it, it's common sense. If I'm flying around and I see another airplane up there and they ask me if I have it in sight and I say yes, they don't expect me to keep going at that person or that airplane. unless I'm suicidal, and I'm now responsible for avoiding that. But at night, it's harder to see other airplanes, and for all the reasons that we listed here, the not only the reduction in visibility because of darkness, but the contrast between the lights in a large urban area like you have in Washington D.C. versus landing out in North Platte, Nebraska at night, where it's pretty black out there, and all you see is the airport. So they will definitely take this into consideration. I would be totally surprised if they don't impose some kind of restrictions, certainly in the DC area. But as I've pointed out, or as we've pointed out over in other incidents, like going back to Sully's Miracle on the Hudson, there were 35 recommendations as a result of that accident that the National Transportation Safety Board recommended. Of that, 5 directly were involved, were factors in that landing in the Hudson. The other 30 were collateral things that they learned from that experience that would have relevance to the industry. And you're going to find that here as well. Even though this was a unique set of circumstances, and many of them were unique to the DC area traffic pattern there, we're going to find out that everybody is going to now look at their environment. Phoenix, LA, everybody's going to look for how they allow military or helicopter traffic transition through their airspace. We have rules already, but those rules proved to be inadequate when we depended upon the helicopter pilot having identified the correct airplane. Okay, so we're going to have our monthly live webinar, coaching webinar on February 20th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And then the next Saturday, 2 days later after that, we'll do an encore presentation at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 o'clock Eastern. They are recorded. You can do one or all of them, or you can sign up to be a member and you can quit after one if you don't like it. I think it's the best thing we've got going. It's certainly the most cost effective, and it's the best value for your buck. And you get access to all the past webinars. We have 2 guided visualizations in each one. And I think we're getting pretty good at that, don't you, Dieter? I think
yes, absolutely. It's really the meditations that are in the Fearless Flyer Club, where all of our recordings are housed. We actually break the meditations into a separate heading as well, so you can go there and just for hours, literally, allow our meditations and guided visualizations help you come back into a space where you are able to make decisions that are really going to help you when you get to the airport, that are really going to help you as you sit in the boarding area and you feel your anxiety rise, which is natural. It's normal. And we got guided visualizations to help you as you are, waiting for the plane, or even while you're sitting, waiting to take off, So we really have a whole library of guided visualizations and meditations to help you. It's
sure
a fantastic resource. Yeah.
And we have all this other stuff. If you are a member of the Fearless Flyer Club and you've ever purchased the 201, you have access to that as part of your membership as well. If you join at the first class level premium, you get the Fearless Flight Kit as part of that. Don't tell Capt Ron, but it saves you $150 to do that, other than buying it outright. And we welcome you to do that. We want you to get better. And we will continue on the first Saturday of every month, except for July and August. We have the live class in Phoenix. If you're anywhere near the Phoenix area on a Southwest airplane, we're going to start hopefully monthly classes on March 8th in the LA area again. And who knows what's beyond that. And then the first Sunday of the month after the first Saturday of the month It always follows the Phoenix class. We have a webinar at 10 o'clock Pacific and 1 o'clock Eastern.
And this is really for you if you cannot make it to Phoenix, if you can't make it to LA, or even if you can, we do register the people that are coming to the Saturday class, because again, the online class, yeah, it's not in an airplane, yeah, it's not in a mock-up, but if you can make it there and you actually join with other people and Capt Ron in the class, I mean, it's another one of those opportunities for you, and it's free. So
Yeah.
if you haven't participated yet, and any kind of sports that you might love, or maybe you're not a sports person, maybe you're a music person, like classical music or something like that. Any kind of coach that is worth anything will tell you got to have the fundamentals, right?
Yep.
And this class is all about the fundamentals, because if you're building on shaky ground, it's not going to go well. And that's why we have the Cleared for Takeoff 101, because it does build those fundamentals.
And we have a regimen, some content that we follow in the monthly classes, but they're always different. Why? Because you make it different. You bring your questions, and the last thing I'll say is, if you have not done a free 15-minute coaching session, what are you waiting for? We'll put that in the notes, and please schedule that. Been a lot of activity. It's been a fun week for me, and I don't mean that in a dark sort of way. It's just been really fun to engage with people. So with that, thanks, Dieter, for your continued support. Thanks to all of you out there for watching every week, and we hope it's been beneficial. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you want to hear, what you want to talk about, and other than that, we'll see you here again next week for FearlessFlight Live again.